Good. Hey, Luke. How are you?
Very well, thank you, considering the times. But
Yeah.
we're going to survive. We'll get through it. So yeah, no, it's good to be with you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And how's good old freezing, sunny, who knows Melbourne today?
Well, I'm actually indoors, so I couldn't actually tell you the answer to that at the moment. When
Oh,
I
yeah.
left in the car, because I am actually working out of a co-working space, don't
Yeah.
tell anyone.
Okay. Yeah.
The sun was out, but by the time I got out of the car, there was a little bit of rain around. So who knows? I've been inside for the last few hours, so maybe I'll find out at
Oh,
some point. But
you will.
look, I don't think it's too dissimilar to where you are.
Well, it's beautiful and sunny right now, which is nice. So
Oh, hello.
Auckland's putting it up. There's not a cloud in the sky, so I
Sorry,
can't complain.
are we already starting an Australia-New Zealand battle here? Is that where we're going?
Well, we'll see, we'll see. But I'm sure there'll be a few that will have something to say. But no, hey, look, thanks for getting on with me. I think
Welcome.
this will be awesome because you, in my opinion, are one of the better copywriters I've come across on digital and social for a long time. So I
Thank
think,
you.
yeah, you're very welcome. And I don't say that lightly. And I think the awesome thing about what you do is really the amazing art of being able to craft a story and not just writing a piece of content that's all about the business. And we'll get into that later, but yeah, awesome. Firstly, what I'd love to get you to do is just give a bit of your background, how you've got to where you are and how you basically have got Story League, your business.
Fair enough. Well, look, we've been doing Story League for about 2 years now. And it came about, look, I guess it was a procession of different things that happened in the moment that I didn't realise at the time would lead me to this point. So I initially started out wanting to be an actor, and I did
I
that.
did not know that.
Yeah, not a lot of people do. And then I'm going to hit you up with this fact that I was on Neighbours for a little bit as well. So there you go.
Oh my God, we've got a
And
celebrity.
no, I wouldn't go that far. And I'll tell you this as well. I also played a serial killer on Australian TV. So
Wow.
back in Frankston in the 90s, there was a serial killer called Paul Denyer.
Okay.
I played him on a TV series. So there you go. So
What's the TV series?
it was called Sensing Murder. So it was one of those.
Oh my God, I know it. Okay, I'm going to totally look that up. Okay, thanks for that. That's brilliant.
Not that I'm egotistical by nature, but I have Googled myself once or twice, and I think it's on YouTube, and
Thank
it's a
you.
German version, so it's got the subtitles on it or something like that. So
Sensing Murder was massive in New Zealand as well, like
I
huge.
believe it was,
Yeah.
yeah, because as I said, when I did Google myself, on the only occasion I've ever done that, quite a number of New Zealand episodes came up as well. So there you go.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Okay, so actor, tick.
So tick. So doing that for a while, went to drama school, didn't
Yeah.
like it. Who would have thought that, acting the colour purple was not my thing?
I won't
And
playing that.
well, no,
I'm joking.
sliding across the floor as a seal and a whole bunch of other things, which I look back and I think,
Fabulous. Yeah.
So then pretty quickly after 18 months of doing that, I quit and went and did a commercial radio course and had a job after 7 weeks. So the only caveat to that was I had to move to regional New South Wales to become the next Carl Sandlands. No, not fabulous. So I absolutely loved that job. But the downside of that was I tried to do a radio program that was centered on the local people, yet my station manager kept on telling me, no, just talk about chicks and cars. And I thought, well, I'm not interested in that. And I know when I go to the pub that they're not interested in that because they'll go out of their way to tell me. So as much as I tried, I didn't really get too far. But what I wanted to do is bring a real political element to what was going on, to talk about the issues that are in the community in amongst playing music that I didn't really like. So I had the epiphany moment when talking about Paris Hilton, who was celebrity of the day, that it wasn't for me. So I packed it in, went to university, or came back to Melbourne and went to university to study journalism and politics. And because of that media experience, I was able to get a job with ABC Radio and work there while I was studying. And then that led into work with The Age as a journalist. and then you got selected to study European politics. So hightailed it over to the Czech Republic to drink a lot of beer and not do much study. And then sort of came back and continued working in journalism for a little bit. But such is the nature of those roles. I was working casually at ABC and at The Age, but there was never the chance of a full-time job. So I thought, well, what am I going to do? So I went and used the other half of my degree, which was politics, and applied for jobs with a number of the parties and ended up getting one as a media advisor, and went through the Rudd-Gillard era.
Ooh, that would have been fun.
Well, it was, because it was the opposing side, so you knew you were going to win. So we sat back day after day and thought, how are these guys going to destroy themselves? And every day they'd come up with a new way.
Wow.
So we went from opposition into government, and then that's when the problems for that side started coming out as well. So that, because of burnout, that sort of saw me leave that, and sort of, as much as I was living in Melbourne, you'd always be in Canberra, you'd always be somewhere else. And so based on that experience, I went and got a job in corporate media roles. And then we started, in one of the corporate roles, we started using a content creation agency, and they would send me articles which were considered finalised by them, and I'd read them, and within about the first sentence or two, I'd pick up 3 or 4 mistakes. And it just wasn't engaging, or it wasn't appealing.
Yeah.
And I just kind of went, well, you know what? I've been a journalist. I know how to write. We have a podcast studio. I've been a radio journalist, so we can do that. So that's a value add. And because of TV experience, I know camera people that we can use too. So why don't I put all of those together and come up with a solution to a problem that I'm finding? And basically what happened for me is I went from journalism and learning how to tell a really powerful, impactful story that engages people into a political and corporate world where they have no interest in that, and any creativity is stifled. And I thought, well, there's got to be a solution to this. And that's where StoryLead was born. So based on all of the experiences that I had, as I said earlier, not realising that they were going to be my future, because I never thought I'd be a business owner. Was never something that was on the radar for me. But look, here we are. And it's been 2 years. And as you would know, there's been some high points and some low points, but we're going okay now. We've got our first full-time member and continue to use the contractors, content creators and whatever else. So it's heading in the right direction, and we get a really good response from our clients and people like you as well. So everything is shaping up to indicate that it's something that I need to be doing.
Yeah, and that's amazing. And I think just understanding more of your background now just makes so much sense.
Yeah, right.
I already knew
in a good way.
In a good way, yeah, completely. Because I think when it comes to writing and crafting a story, there's so much that goes into it. And I think a lot of people think that it's easy, just write a bit of content, put it up, and it's. God, how many times have people read things online? It's just absolute bullshit or just boring or whatever. So I guess, having your experience through not only acting, radio, being in regional Victoria or New South Wales, I should say, and going into politics and obviously having a whole lot of conversations there with different people of different viewpoints gives you such a unique take on how to communicate. And I can see it through your writing as well. And I really want to be able to today get a bit of the knowledge out of your brain as to, firstly, what makes a good story, because I think people just think that they can talk shit the whole time and it will connect, which is not true. So I'd love to.
No, it's not.
What makes a great story? How can you communicate so people listen?
Yeah, well, taking a step back from that initially, you mentioned there's so much crap in the content market. Well, there is, and if you look at the metrics on it, there's 5,000 blogs posted every minute of every day, and there's 300 hours of video content uploaded to YouTube every minute, and there's something like 50 million podcast episodes available on iTunes or wherever you're listening to podcasts. So there's saturation in the market. And that's what I looked at when I first started Story League. And I thought, what's our point of difference? And that became about telling a story. And I looked at it even further, and there's so many academic studies to back it up, that the thing that people remember is the story, not the data that you tell them. So if you tell them a piece of data, they've got about a 10% chance of remembering it. But if you tell them the story, it goes up to 70. So that's when I started thinking, okay, well, how do we do that in the content that's created? And that's the launching pad, if you will, of which all good content needs to come from. So by telling a story, what you're doing is making it memorable, and chances are you're telling it to someone who's had a similar experience to you, or they can relate to it in some way. And so that's the big thing about content. People need to read it, and it needs to resonate with them. And the greatest way to do that is by telling a story. And stories can take many forms. It can be your own personal story, which is the hero's journey, which is basically what Hollywood movies are about. And the same story gets regurgitated time and time again. It just has a different actor. But ultimately, it's following them along their journey, which is a really, really powerful one for entrepreneurs who are first entering the market. But having a story also sets you apart from everyone else who's doing a blog post based on what they know their SEO is. So, for us, we've got copywriting services. We're not going to do just a bland blog post about copywriting services. You've got to stand out and have something different. You've got to have a story in it, and there's so many examples, and we've got them behind the scenes of two competitor blogs which a top 7 tips type of post. They'll be from a business coach, and it'll say how to succeed in your business. Tip 1: start each day with a to-do list. Well, like, seriously, how stupid are we?
And how many times have we read that too? It's not
exactly, and that's exactly what I'm saying. Like, we've got them time and time again. There's examples that we use with potential clients, which basically says, okay, you can do this because these businesses have known their SEO, or you can understand your SEO and you can put your unique slant on it, which is a story.
I love that, and I think one of the things for me as well, when I remember a great piece of content, it's because it's the emotion that it invokes within me, right? So to your point, if I read that top 10 list or top 7 tips, boring. I've read it all before. It's the same old regurgitated content, blah, blah, blah. Whereas if I read someone's blog post around how they went from, getting up early in the morning and saving their marriage and losing weight and doing these things through being organized in this thing, and you kind of weave it through.
Absolutely.
I'm going to connect with that. And I'm also going to have respect for them because of the vulnerability they're putting out there as well. And I think that's a big thing and I want to talk to you a bit about that, because something I've heard a lot of people say recently is that, I would love to put my story out there, but I don't think I'm worthy, or I don't think people are going to respond well to it. What would you say to that?
I would say that I'm in the same boat.
Yeah.
One thing that Story League has not done in our 2 years is a lot of our own marketing. And the 2 reasons for that is because we've been too busy doing everyone else's, which, they're our clients. We've got to service them, which is the dilemma of all small businesses. And the other one is that fear of the unknown, of pushing yourself out there. And I know we can write a really great story because we're doing it for our clients. And as I've just explained to you, my story is quite involved as well. So it needs to be out there. But there is a real fear in doing it. So I understand that. But what it comes down to is, as you've mentioned, it's being vulnerable. It's showing the emotion to it. It's also explaining to people that it doesn't always go to plan. There's conflict in there. There's situations that don't go right, but you become human when you explain them. And this is one thing that I learned with politicians, because behind the scenes, I used to do a lot of media training for them, and we get them to a point where they were genuine and they were likable. And then as soon as they'd be on TV...
Must have taken ages.
Took a while.
Yeah.
It's a shame I wasn't paid by the minute, or even the hour for that matter. But then they completely lose it again, and they just go stale phase.
Fact.
Yeah, and I'm
not
like,
fact. Statement. I should say.
Lie.
Yeah.
You didn't want to say.
Classify it.
Yeah. So yes, I understand there's a real vulnerability around that, but that actually becomes a really strong point in which you should be telling stories from, because ultimately people resonate with others who haven't got it right. Whereas, I mean, how many times do you scroll on Facebook when you see some young entrepreneur who's telling you to sign up to their online course because it generated them 50 million worth of business in the last 90 days. That's crap.
Yeah,
that's crap. It doesn't work. All that is seeking to do is profiteer off the gullible, and there should be laws around that not being allowed to happen, because there are people who will fall for that trap and it will cost them money. Whereas people who can think for themselves won't resonate with that, but they will with a story. And particularly a personal story, because people buy based on person, not necessarily brand now, because most of us are not Apple or Nike.
Yeah, that's really interesting you say that. And I've been actually having that conversation with a few clients recently, especially now when we're in a time where some people can't trade or they've got limited trade available. And what I've been telling a lot, or pretty much all my clients right now that will listen, is now is the best time to be marketing, even if you can't sell a product. You have the opportunity to build your brand, your personal profile. As you said, people buy off people. If they trust you and they like you, they're going to remember the shit you've been through. And to the point where, some clients like, hey, this sucks right now. They're doing content, so this sucks, but we're still going and we're doing this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because you don't want to be the shiny, perfect thing on the wall, because people are going to go, well, screw you, mate. I'm having a tough time and I'm going to turn off because...
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. And look, there's so many examples out there of people who have been very humble and very genuine in their approach, and it's worked incredibly well. And that can only work if they are genuine and if they are humble. But if they get it right, it can be a really good selling tool in the content space.
Yeah. So let's get into more of the tactical style of content, right? So obviously you are first and foremost a copywriter. Is that correct? How would you see yourself? I'd love to know more.
I guess the split up of the business at the moment is we do most of our work in the copywriting space, then podcasts, then videos. So we've gone through a little bit of a business transition. We used to do more higher end videos. We really don't do that anymore because there's so many examples.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, there's just too many examples of someone who shoots something on a mobile phone and it outdoes by virtue of metrics like comments and shares and likes and those sorts of things, more so than a professionally shot video. And so justifying coming in and saying, oh, we'll do a video for $3,000 to $5,000 is really hard. Whereas we can say, well, you know what, we'll give you the script. All you need to do is present it to camera, and you can do that on your mobile phone. So, going forward, we're heavily in the writing space, although podcasting is building quite nicely for us too. The focus is definitely copywriting.
So I guess in that vein, then, that's a really good point. I just want to, before we go to something else, is that you don't need to, you can create content literally on your phone. And I think people get really stuck up on this. What if I'm like, that's like, because we're going back to that whole point of being real, And
it is. Yep. And people will put up with a lot of things in the content space as long as they get the value from the piece of content. So, I mean, if you look at one of the most popular podcasts going around, which is Tim Ferriss, I listen to that, and some of that audio is unlistenable. You can't understand what's going on, but people tune in because there's value in the bits that they can pick up. Yeah. So that's not done in a professional studio, and it doesn't need to be. I mean, look at the way we're talking now. A couple of years ago,
what do you mean? Don't you like my professional studio of Auckland?
Oh, yeah, no, I do, absolutely. But but the point is, you're sitting in New Zealand, I'm sitting in Melbourne. We're having this really good conversation. Well, let's hope your audience thinks it's really good.
I reckon they'll find some value.
Well, I'm sure they'll comment if they don't. But, you know, if we were to go into it thinking, oh, well, it has to be this high-class, professionally shot thing, it would never happen.
No.
So you can just get the job done, you can add the value and not worry too much about the professionalisation of something, because at the end of the day, I look at a video, and this is a case in point, and I think, well, it's not shot to the rule of thirds. And there's no looking space and all those sorts of professional terms, but an audience member who doesn't understand it doesn't sit there and
completely
give a shit about that at all. So,
well, they just listen to the audio and just turn off the.
and they can do that as well. That's quite common.
Completely.
So, particularly for long form content. So, yeah, no, people need to stop thinking that it needs to be a significant investment in technology, and realise that it's about the value and the education of the content that's in it.
I agree. And so I guess starting on that, how do you go about crafting a piece of content for a client? Like what is the process you go through? How do you make sure that what you're creating is on personal brand or on brand is actually going to connect with the audience?
Well, we do that in a number of ways. So initially for us, our engagement is we do a 6-month content workshop. So within that session, obviously business owners are involved. They can have their ideal target market in there too. So one of their customers who they trust and they want the opinion of. We will thrash out a number of questions in that. We'll touch on things like what their competitors are doing, what their ideal customers want from them, what their SEO says, and where they are in a business. And from that, because, you know, being journalists, we know how to craft good quality questions and know how to ask them. We get a lot of information from those sessions. So we can then go away and build out a content strategy for the next 6 months. And at that point, there's really 2 options for them. They can try and create that content in-house if they want to. Some of them, that's their preference. We've got one doing that at the moment. Or they can obviously engage us to write it, because, you know, we've got the time and the expertise, and that's what we do. So within that session, we start making some judgments about the frequency of content and the focus of the content. So we do hero's journey. So that's one thing that, particularly for a business that has started and they're trying to communicate to their market that they're new and here's why they're available. So
do you want to talk a bit about the hero's journey? So I'm sure a lot of people probably wouldn't have come across that term before.
Yep. Well, as I said earlier, it's Hollywood 101. So it's how they tell a story. And for an industry that makes billions of dollars year after year, I think there's something in it. So ultimately what it is, it's setting the hero or the business owner up and explaining their journey through to the point to which they can actually serve, or best place to service, their customers. So it'll talk about the opportunity that they've seen in their market. For me, that would be the fact that a lot of content is crap and that I wanted to change that, and I thought I had the skill set to do it. It will introduce conflict along the way. So, you know, COVID-19 would be conflict for me right now, because the week that started, we onboarded our first full-time member and lost clients at the same time. So there's conflict. But that's the way it goes. It would talk about it, or it does also talk about your support network. So that's people like you who, I mean, you've referred us work before, and there are others who do it. So it's the people who you go to for that support and that you can rely on. And then it talks about the transformation. So, you know, what's happened on your business journey to ultimately get to that point where you know that you're best placed to serve the demands of your ideal customers. And what that does, if you can put that piece together, and there's 12 points in the hero's journey that you've got to focus on, that basically explains to people who don't know who you are and why you're good at what you're doing. Because one of the big things in business is, if you go to a network referral type of group, which we're all involved in, or you meet people or whatever else, they know that you're in finance, or they know that you're a lawyer, but what they don't know is why you are. And that becomes the point of difference, because there's a big story.
I completely understand.
We've got someone at the door, I think.
No, that's all right. We'll keep going. So in respect to that as well, I think there's a lot of value in not just trying to thrust yourself upon someone and go, just buy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that approach because it humanizes.
Yep. And the other side of the coin too is in the content space, people need to be warmed up to who you are before they buy from you. They want to know. So if they can find that out pretty quickly, it shortens the sales cycle, which is really important too. So we know that the Content Marketing Institute out of the US has got stats that indicate people are engaging with up to at least 5 pieces of content before wanting to engage you as a business these days.
Yeah, so that's really important to know.
Yeah, so if you don't have those pieces of content out there, one of which needs to be explaining who you are and what you do, then you're missing out on opportunities because, you know, the buyer's cycle now of someone who doesn't know your brand is go to Google, I have a problem, type it in. Whoever has that piece of content who answers that, which is typically SEO content, which is another one in which we work in, they'll read that answer. If they get the answer they want, they'll look around at a few other bits of content too, one of which being, who are you? And then make their decision to purchase from there. So it ultimately, piece to market, it's a very powerful one, the hero's journey.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for clarifying that, because I think there's, you know, people can put up content for content's sake, but unless you have kind of a content strategy or a vision in mind as to the story you want to tell along this path and the objective out of it, I think that's when you can kind of get into the crap content part.
Yeah, absolutely. Because what it does is people understand that they need content, but they don't know where they're going to pull it from. So it's just like, okay, well, we need something. Let's just write about this. Here's 350 words on something that doesn't really matter, but we'll push it out there and see what happens. But in a content strategies where you can work out your hero's journey, SEO content, thought leadership is another one that we work in, opinion piece content, customer pain points. So there's any number of things that you can do. Joint venture content with businesses that you can each refer work to and tap into their market. So there's any number of things at which you can rely on. You just need to know how to do it and then craft the story which you know, doesn't necessarily sell the product, but talks about the value of education through the content that you're creating.
And that's it. And I think the other thing I always tell my clients is that don't be the person who's shouting at a customer. Your content needs to be of value to your client or customer, right? So if you're putting up a piece of content saying, my name's Katija, I do this, I'm amazing, and don't give any relevance or reference or value to who I'm trying to communicate to.
Yeah, absolutely. That goes back to what we were saying before about the entrepreneur standing in front of an expensive yacht telling me that he's earned millions by doing some simple marketing strategies. Well, that is content that's done for his benefit or their benefit, not the consumers. So you need to realign it and make it about the consumer, make it about your audience in order to engage them. And egotistical content has no place as far as I'm concerned.
God, not at the moment. God.
Absolutely right now.
And something you said before, Luke, which really I think is really important. You talked about you obviously do a big, massive piece of analysis and research with your clients up front. So I think that's a really good takeaway. If you don't know where to start with content, go and talk to your customers, talk to your staff, talk to people who can give you a different perspective as to how they see you or your business. Write it down, take notes.
Yep, absolutely,
It's such a different outlook and a way to get unstuck.
When we get access to our clients' customers, we regularly survey them, because what happens is we'll go into these strategy sessions and business owner will say, yeah, we want to do content on X, Y, and Z. And I'll say, look, that's fine, but here's what your SEO is saying. And here's what your customers are saying they want, which is always different from what the business thinks. So you hit them up and you say to business owner, well, what do we want to do? Do we want to do content that you think they want or content that they're telling us they actually want?
Yeah, and that's it. And even if you're just starting out and you're wanting to build a personal brand, talk to your friends and family. Like, maybe sometimes they might tell you things that you want to hear, but maybe ask the friends that, are going to give you the truth, but maybe the things that they appreciate about you or what your strengths are. And it's just get that insight.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It's good quality content involves other people, so you can't do good content if it's just focused on yourself and what you think.
Yeah. So tell me, what kind of content is good at the moment would you recommend for potentially an e-commerce business or someone trying to sell products online? What kind of content, what platforms have you seen work well?
Well, driving traffic back to the website is still number one as far as I'm concerned. So then therefore having a blog, which can do that, is still incredibly important. And again, going back to the Content Marketing Institute, they will tell you that small businesses with a consistent blog have a 126% better chance of engaging customers or converting customers than small businesses that don't have one. So you need to be in that space. And blogs going up now, they need to be at least fortnightly. So one a month is not enough to drive the traffic you need. And you also have to take into consideration Google metrics and analytics as well. And what that will tell you is it needs to be long form content. So there's data out there from SEMrush, which is content SEO type company.
Very powerful tool.
Very powerful, yep. Their metrics indicate that blogs that are 3,000 words or longer are the ones that get the most likes, shares, comments, etc. I know, and most people sit there and they think, I would never read a 3,000 word blog, and most of us wouldn't. So that's what I call the master and commander relationship of content. So you've got the master, which is like, I love it. Which is like, it's Google. It's saying it has to be long form copy and it has to be like this. But then you have the commander, which is your audience, and you need to deliver content that they want. So that's when you go through that long form copy and you break it up into subheadings, because people scroll, they scan. They find the subheading that's relevant, they read that, they may read one or more too. So you've got to satisfy both beasts. And if you can do that, then you're getting yourself a really good piece of content.
Oh, that's such good insight. I don't think I've written 3,000 words since university, but hey.
Well, obviously we do it in a business capacity, but you're right. Yeah, I mean, most people don't, because, and this then becomes a difference between having a piece of content that saturates the market as opposed to having a piece of content that dominates the market.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying, again, like, the master and commander, I think that's genius, because, when you put a piece of content up on a website, obviously Google is the one indexing it and putting it into search. So there's that element. You've got to have that. You've got to kind of play by the rules there if you want to get it organically reaching people, which is very important. But also, I love that, breaking it up into subheadings and sections. So there might be one paragraph that's relevant to someone, but at least that way I think that's really, really awesome. What's your thoughts on, let's talk a bit more about people who maybe are in a professional environment. So what's your thoughts on LinkedIn and how you can use LinkedIn from a content generation standpoint?
Yep, LinkedIn is very important. The growth in LinkedIn just continues to grow year after year after year, and that's not going to change. What is of difference there, and it's similar with Facebook as well, is the reliance on video content now.
Yes.
So what people need to be doing is they need to be pushing out their videos, and they can do that on their mobile phone, as we mentioned earlier. That's easy. This is part of the strategy in which we do. So we understand that, but we also understand that we need to drive traffic back to the website. So the most effective way to do that is to write a blog post. You put that on your website, then you do a video script talking about that blog that's on your website, but you post that video organically to LinkedIn because that's the way they want it. And in the copy that sits above the video is where you give the URL to go to the blog post. Yeah, it's as you know, we've got some monthly content packages now, and that's one of the things that we do in them. So the blog post always remains the hero piece of content, because that's the one where you can do the long form piece. That's the one that can drive SEO traffic. That's the one that can have the CTA to, sign up to our online course or whatever it might be. But then to reference the things that are going on and the way social media people want their content, which is 80% video related, you need to satisfy that demand as well. So you do that by doing your 90-second video. I see so many videos on LinkedIn of people standing there and the video goes for over 7 minutes. It's a difficult one because you can get away with that if you're offering the value.
Of course.
But based on LinkedIn's own metrics, people skim past in about 10 seconds. So if you're not articulating the point of your 7-minute video in the first 10 seconds, you're missing a massive opportunity. So average listener times are about 90 seconds. So I'm a big believer that you stick to them. And if you've got more to say, you divert them back to your blog post.
That's a really good tip. And I like that, I guess, approach where learn on each of the platforms. They do change and they do go through different ebbs and flows of what is the trending content piece or style of content or placement that they will favor. So a lot of this it's through trial and error, but you can read through this through social media blogs and stuff like that. They'll start insights. So if you do the work and kind of piece together what you have done, what is the most preferred one, you're going to get much more traction organically. Either way. And, with Facebook at the moment, like lives are just pretty much going through the roof to the point where they don't work sometimes, which has been my frustration lately. But, obviously there's been a massive influx with people being at home and being able to live stream their kids playing or their cooking show or whatever, it's just the reality of what it is right now. But again, that's starting a trend. And on Facebook alone, I know it's been like an increase of 50 to 60% on video, on messenger video, and a whole lot of other stuff right now. So if you can pick up on those trends and leverage them in your content, I think that's a really smart move.
Absolutely.
LinkedIn, I think I agree. It's a pretty powerful platform. And another thing, like LinkedIn's organic reach compared to the others is huge.
That's right.
Huge. Yeah. So if you're a professional and you want to be able to get cut through in that space, I think it's really important. Let's talk about podcasts, I guess, because I think podcasting has definitely come into it seems like there's a lot of podcasts going around right now. So what is the value of a podcast? Is it right for everyone? How can you leverage this kind of, new listening trend? And what's your experience for people who are trying to get into it too, I guess?
Yeah, podcasting is, in an Australian sense, an emerging trend. Yeah. It's boomed in the US to the point where there's podcasting businesses who have just been bought by Spotify for $230 million. So, wow. To me, that says Spotify is going to try and take on iTunes. So watch that space. But obviously, podcasts are growing. And as with a lot of things, 5 to 10 years later, we'll learn it and understand it in Australia and we'll apply it. Because I still have conversations with small business owner about what a podcast is. Yeah. It's not uncommon, although obviously a lot of people know what it is as well. Podcasting offers a really, really big opportunity, particularly if you have a product or a service or you're in an industry that requires detailed knowledge.
Yes.
Because average listener times of a podcast are about 22 minutes. Whereas for a video, it's 90 seconds and, blog posts are about 3,000 words, as we mentioned before. So the amount of information you can communicate in 22 minutes is a heap load more than what you can do in a video or in a blog. And people will listen because they've got to download your podcast or they've got to connect with you on iTunes or whatever it might be. So then therefore they're making the investment in the time that it's going to take because it says it up front. You can look at it and it says this podcast goes for 40 minutes or I've seen them for 3 hours, but I wouldn't suggest small business owners do that because you're not Joe Rogan. And he's got the audience and the name, obviously, to do something that's incredibly long, but most people don't. But just keep that metric in mind that average listening times are 22 minutes. So that means there's a lot of information that can be communicated. And if you see what you're doing as thought leadership or very education based, like something like legal, we do a lot of work with law firms, and when they get on to talk about detailed legal processes, that really can't be done in 90 seconds because it requires a lot more, because ultimately the market who's listening, they want to know the information, but they don't understand it like business owner does. So it takes time to explain. So that's a really, really important one. And I would encourage anyone to start looking at podcasting and seeing what it can do for them. As with anything, you need to make some judgments as to whether a podcast is right for you, as opposed to, a video or a blog. I guess, and we would do that as part of the content strategy, but there would be examples of where a podcast is probably not applicable to a business. And just off the top of my head, that would be someone who is perhaps maybe involved in aged care, because if your target market is that sort of older demographic, some of them will understand podcasts, but a lot of them won't as well. So they're probably not going to tune into something or download something that is completely foreign to them. So that's probably not the way to target them. Look, podcasting does offer a lot of opportunities.
Definitely. And I think you just touched on something there, which I think is important. Again, it does come down to research. And this is my, I guess, digital strategy brain coming in. Understand where your customers consume content. That's the first thing. If you're creating a podcast and you're trying, as you said, trying to target, I don't know, 70 plus, it probably isn't the right medium, and maybe, offline, who knows. But the other thing I think as well is what I love about podcasting and audio-based stuff is that it allows people to consume content in a different, environment of their day. So I know for me, I love listening to podcasts if I'm going to work or I'm walking or something like that, where I can't physically, I could look at my phone and walk into a tree, but there are different times or cooking dinner and stuff like that. Like you need to, you talked about this before, those different touch points. Not always is it going to be visual content or people using their eyes to read. If you can use audible content that's able to basically achieve the same thing, and people consume content in different ways. You may be a visual person, you may be take content on through listening, and it's about being, I think, having your eggs in as many baskets as relevantly possible when it comes to that.
And to your point there, Kaitija, as well, I find it really interesting that average listener time's at 22 minutes, which is probably roughly the average length of commute for people living in a city on their way to and from work. So I
don't know if you're in Melbourne, as you are.
Oh, well, it can be longer, obviously, but...
I know what you mean, though. Or even driving somewhere, going to pick up the kids or going to...
Exactly. So, I mean, if you can fit it into those parameters, then you get a really good chance of someone listening from start to finish, which is ultimately what you want in one go. But again, if the value is there and they don't get to the end of it, they did see the value, they will come back as well.
Awesome. Luke, so we're about to finish up. So I just want to know, is there any other tips or tricks that you think everyone should know about content in this day and age?
Look, I guess the big one just remains that they need to be doing it. They can either do it themselves or they can get, their copywriters are everywhere. Good ones are a little harder to find, but
that's true.
Content is the most cost-effective way to drag in new business, to generate leads and convert them into customers, because ultimately it's something that an individual can do themselves. They obviously just need to be very careful to not saturate the market, but do something that adds value.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Luke. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today.
You're welcome, anytime.
Yes, and if anyone wants to reach out to Luke, I'll tag you in the post, and then he's a content gun. So as you said, just keep doing it, guys. Get out there, do it, be consistent, be relevant. Just give it a damn go. Thank you.
Keep front of mind now, because when this situation blows over, and it will, the people who have been front of mind will be the ones that get the business.
Have a wonderful day, love, and have fun in sunny, rainy, who knows, Melbourne.
I can't see from here, but same to you over there.
Thanks, my friend. Talk to you soon.
You will.